The diplomatic shuttle hummed through the darkness of space, carrying humanity's hope on its metal wings. Inside the cramped vessel, Commander Jake Torres checked his uniform for the 10th time. His reflection in the polished wall panel showed a man trying hard to look confident. "Stop fidgeting, boss," Lieutenant Sarah Chen said from the pilot's seat. "You look fine." "Fine isn't good enough," Jake muttered. "We're meeting the most powerful military force in the galaxy. We need to look perfect." The Zarkath Empire controlled 300 star systems. Their warriors were legends throughout known space. Every species that met them either became allies or disappeared from history. Humanity was about to find out which category they would fall into. "Approaching the flagship now," Sarah announced. And, wow. Through the viewport, the Zarkath vessel appeared. It was massive. 10 times larger than Earth's biggest space station. The hull was dark red, covered in symbols that looked like battle scars turned into art. Weapons arrays lined every surface. This was a ship built for war. Jake's heart pounded. Behind him, the rest of his small team looked nervous. Dr. Marcus Webb, the xenobiologist, was reviewing his notes about Zarkath culture. Ambassador Patricia Okonkwo sat perfectly still, her diplomatic training keeping her face calm. Security Officer David Park kept his hand near his sidearm, though everyone knew it would be useless against Zarkath warriors. "Remember the plan," Jake said. "We're here to show that humans are worth talking to. Stay polite, stay calm, and let me do most of the talking." "What if they decide we're not worth their time?" David asked. "Then we smile and hope they let us leave in one piece," Jake replied. The shuttle docked with a heavy clang. The airlock cycled open, revealing a corridor that seemed designed for giants. Everything was built on a scale that made humans feel small. The walls were decorated with weapons and battle honors. The lighting was dim and red, making shadows dance like ghosts. A Zarkath escort waited for them. The warrior stood 7 feet tall, with 4 powerful arms and scales that looked like natural armor. His eyes were like a predator's, tracking every movement. He carried a plasma rifle that could probably destroy their entire shuttle with one shot. "Follow," the warrior growled in a voice that rumbled like distant thunder. The translator device on Jake's collar converted the alien language into English. They walked through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. Other Zarkath warriors stopped to stare at the humans. Some looked curious. Most looked hungry. Jake kept his spine straight and his expression friendly, even though every instinct screamed at him to run. Finally, they reached a massive chamber. It was clearly designed for negotiations, with a circular table and viewing screens showing star maps. But it felt more like an arena. Other alien species were already present: the insectoid Crix, the floating energy beings called lumens, and the rock-like granite collective. All of them had been part of the galactic community for centuries. Humans were the newcomers, the primitives trying to sit at the adult table. The humans arrived last. One of the Crix delegates clicked in amusement. "How appropriate." Before Jake could respond, a door on the far side opened. Every alien in the room stood immediately. Even the lumens who rarely showed respect to anyone. Jake and his team quickly followed suit. War Queen Shratha entered the chamber. She was magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. Taller than the other Zarkath. Her scales were darker and marked with silver patterns that spoke of countless battles. She wore armor that looked both ceremonial and functional, decorated with the skulls of creatures Jake couldn't identify. Her 4 arms moved with deadly grace. But it was her eyes that caught Jake's attention. They were intelligent, calculating, missing nothing. She took her place at the head of the table. Her honor guard, 4 massive warriors, stood behind her like living statues. "We begin," Shratha announced. Her voice was powerful but controlled, the sound of someone used to being obeyed. "The humans wish to join our trade networks. They wish to have access to our technology. They wish to be considered equals in the galactic community." The way she said it made it sound ridiculous. "That is correct, War Queen," Ambassador Okonkwo said smoothly. "Humanity has much to offer in return." "Such as?" Shratha's mandibles clicked. "It might have been curiosity, or contempt. Your species has barely left its home system. You have no significant military. Your technology is primitive compared to ours. What could you possibly offer the Zarkath Empire?" The other aliens watched with interest. They'd all been through similar meetings once. Now they were curious to see if humanity would crumble under the pressure. Jake should have let the ambassador handle it. That was the protocol. But something about the War Queen's presence, her confidence, her absolute command of the room, made him forget his training. "We offer something you might have forgotten about," Jake said quietly. Every eye in the room turned to him. His team looked shocked that he'd spoken out of turn. Ambassador Okonkwo's expression said they would have words later. Shratha's 4 eyes focused on Jake like targeting lasers. "Speak, human. What could your weak species possibly teach the Zarkath?" Jake met her gaze. Later, he would wonder where he found the courage. In that moment, looking at this alien warrior queen who could probably tear him apart without effort, he felt something unexpected. Not just fear, but fascination. "We offer hope," Jake said. "We've been to the edge of extinction and came back. We've learned to survive not because we're the strongest, but because we never give up. And we know how to see the value in others, even when they look nothing like us." He paused, then added with a slight smile, "Hey, gorgeous queen. That's what makes us special." The translator rendered his words perfectly into Zarkath language. The room went absolutely silent. Shratha stood slowly. Her hand moved to the plasma blade at her side. Her honor guard reached for their weapons. Every alien in the chamber prepared to witness humanity's first and last diplomatic meeting. "Careful with that tone, human," Shratha said, her voice dropping to a dangerous growl. Jake's heart skipped a beat. Not from terror, though there was plenty of that. Something in her eyes, in the way she looked at him, made his pulse race. For entirely different reasons. He just made either the best or worst decision of his life, and he was about to find out which. The tension in the chamber was thick enough to cut with a knife. Every alien diplomat held their breath. The Crix delegates' antennae twitched nervously. The lumens dimmed their glow, preparing to evacuate. Even the stoic Granite Collective members shifted uneasily. Ambassador Okonkwo looked like she wanted to strangle Jake herself. Dr. Webb had gone pale. Sarah and David watched their commander with expressions that mixed horror and disbelief. Jake stood frozen, his brain finally catching up with his mouth. He'd just called the most dangerous warrior in the known galaxy gorgeous in front of witnesses. Diplomatic incidents had started wars over less. Shratha's 4 arms tensed. Her scales seemed to darken with anger. The plasma blade at her hip hummed as her hand rested on its grip. Her honor guard moved forward, weapons ready. "You dare address the War Queen with such familiarity?" One of the guards snarled. Jake knew he had 2 choices. He could apologize, grovel, beg for forgiveness. That would mark humanity as weak, as species that crawled before power. Or he could stand his ground and hope that Zarkath culture valued courage over submission. He chose to gamble everything. "I do dare," Jake said, keeping his voice steady, despite his racing heart. "Where I come from, War Queen, we speak the truth, even when it's dangerous. Especially when it's dangerous. Lying to make someone comfortable is an insult to their intelligence." He took a breath and continued. "You asked what humans offer. This is it. We see things clearly. And I see a leader who commands respect, not through fear alone, but through strength of character. That's worth acknowledging, regardless of the risk." The chamber remained silent. Shratha stared at Jake for what felt like an eternity. Her eyes searched his face, looking for mockery or deception. Jake met her gaze without flinching, though his knees felt weak. Then something unexpected happened. Shratha's mandibles twitched. It was subtle, but Jake's crash course in Zarkath body language recognized it. She was amused. Bold, Shratha said, releasing her weapon. Foolish beyond measure, but bold. She sat back down slowly. The Zarkath respect courage over cowardice. Human, you may live. For now. The honor guard stepped back. The other aliens released breaths they'd been holding. Ambassador Okonkwo's expression shifted from panic to cautious relief. However, Shratha continued, leaning forward, pretty words mean nothing without substance. Your species claims to be survivors, Commander Torres. But survival alone does not earn partnership with the Zarkath Empire. What would earn partnership? Jake asked. Proof, Shratha replied. Proof that humans are more than clever prey trying to hide among predators. The negotiations proceeded, but the atmosphere had changed. The other species watched humanity with new interest. The Krix delegate even offered a respectful nod. Jake had done something none of them had managed. He'd surprised the War Queen. For the next 3 hours, they discussed trade agreements, technology sharing, and territorial boundaries. Jake noticed that Shratha kept watching him, her expression thoughtful. Whenever he spoke, she listened with an intensity that made him acutely aware of every word he chose. Finally, Shratha called for a recess. As the other delegates filed out, she stood and walked directly toward the human delegation. Her guards followed, creating an imposing wall of armored muscle. Commander Torres, she said, remain. The rest of you may go. Ambassador Okonkwo stepped forward. War Queen, protocol requires. Our protocol? Protocol is what I say it is on my vessel, Shratha interrupted. The commander will be safe. You have my word. A Zarkath's word was binding. Breaking it meant death by their own hand. Reluctantly, the human team left, though Sarah shot Jake a look that clearly said, Don't die, boss. Alone with the War Queen and her guards, Jake felt very small and very human. Shratha circled him slowly, studying him like a scientist examining a new specimen. You are short for your species? She asked. Average, actually, Jake replied. And you have no natural weapons, no claws, no venom, no armor. She tapped one of her scales. It made a sound like stone. Your skin is soft. You could be killed so easily. We're tougher than we look, Jake said. Shratha stopped in front of him. This close, he could see the intricate patterns on her scales, the old scars beneath her armor, the intelligence burning in her eyes. I have studied your species since you sent your first request for contact, she admitted. Humans fascinate me. You have no advantages, yet you survived ice ages, plagues, predators larger and stronger than you. You even survived yourselves, your own weapons, your own hatred. How? 1. Jake thought carefully. We adapt. We cooperate. We're stubborn enough to keep trying when any reasonable species would give up. And you make allies, Shratha added. Even with your own predators. I read about your dogs, wolves, you tamed through patience and mutual benefit. Is that what you hope to do with us? Tame the Zarkath? No, Jake said honestly. You can't tame equals. But you can be partners. You can learn from each other. Shratha made a sound that might have been a laugh. Partners. No species has dared suggest partnership with the Zarkath Empire. They beg for protection, or tremble in fear. Maybe that's the problem, Jake said carefully. Maybe fear isn't the same as respect. The War Queen went very still. For a moment, Jake thought he'd pushed too far. Then she nodded slowly. You continue to surprise me, human. I wish to test your species properly, not with words, but with action. She gestured to her guards. The Zarkath have a tradition. When considering a new ally, we hunt together. It shows character, reveals truth. A hunt? Jake asked. In 3 days, you will join me in the wilderness deck. It is stocked with creatures from a dozen worlds. Dangerous creatures. Her eyes gleamed. We will see if human courage extends beyond bold words. And if I refuse? Then humanity's petition for alliance ends here. We will consider you unworthy. Jake knew he had no real choice. Refusing would doom Earth's chances of joining the galactic community. But accepting meant facing unknown dangers with a warrior species that probably considered safe hunting to be something that could kill most beings. I accept, Jake said. Shratha's mandibles twitched again, that almost smile. Good. Prepare yourself, Commander Torres. In 3 days, we hunt. Try not to die too quickly. I would be disappointed. As Jake left the chamber, his legs felt like rubber. He'd survived the first meeting. He'd somehow earned the War Queen's interest. But now he had to survive something far worse, a Zarkath hunt. Behind him, Shratha watched him go, her expression unreadable. Interesting creatures. These humans, she murmured to her guards. Jake spent every spare moment studying Zarkath hunting traditions and preparing himself mentally for what was coming. Dr. Webb provided information about the types of creatures that might be in the wilderness deck. None of it was encouraging. The Zarkath hunt apex predators for sport, Marcus explained nervously. Things that would terrify most species. And they do it to relax. That's comforting, Jake muttered, checking his equipment for the 100th time. Ambassador Okonkwo had tried to stop him. This is madness, Commander. You're not a soldier anymore. You're a diplomat. Let someone else go. But Jake knew that wouldn't work. Shratha had challenged him specifically. Sending someone else would be seen as cowardice. He had to do this himself, no matter how insane it seemed. On the morning of the hunt, Jake entered the preparation chamber. A Zarkath armorer waited there, surrounded by weapons that looked like they could level buildings. You may choose your weapons, human, the armorer said, gesturing to the impressive arsenal. Jake looked at the plasma rifles, energy blades, and explosive devices. The armorer's eyes widened in surprise. Your primitive weapons? Against what awaits you? If I'm representing humanity, I should use human tools, Jake replied, trying to sound more confident than he felt. Word of his decision spread quickly. By the time Jake reached the wilderness deck entrance, a crowd had gathered in the observation area above. Aliens from a dozen species pressed against the viewing windows, curious to see if the bold human would survive his first minutes. Shratha waited at the entrance, wearing hunting armor that was lighter but somehow more menacing than her ceremonial gear. Her 4 arms carried various weapons. She looked like death personified. You came, she said, and Jake thought he detected approval in her voice. I gave my word, Jake replied. And you bring only those? Shratha looked at Jake's equipment. A standard projectile rifle, a knife, some rope, and a survival pack. To her, they must have looked like children's toys. These have kept humans alive for centuries, Jake said. Shratha's mandibles twitched. Then let us see if they keep you alive today. The creature we hunt is called a void reaver. It comes from a moon with low gravity and no atmosphere. Fast, strong, and very angry. How many have you killed? Jake asked. Personally, 17. She paused. How many has your species killed? We've never seen one before today. Then this will be educational. Shratha pressed a control panel. The hunt begins when we enter. Kill or be killed. Those are the only rules. The massive door opened, revealing a landscape that looked like several different worlds merged together. There were rocky areas, dense vegetation, water features, and sections that seemed to defy gravity. The ceiling was so high it mimicked an open sky. They stepped inside. The door sealed behind them with a sound like a tomb closing. Jake's senses went into overdrive. Every shadow could hide danger. Every sound might be the creature stalking them. He noticed Shratha moving with confident grace, her weapons ready but her posture relaxed. She'd done this hundreds of times. The Reaver can sense vibrations through the ground, she explained, as they moved deeper into the wilderness. It hunts by movement and heat. Your soft body will be very attractive to it. You're really selling this experience, Jake muttered. They didn't have to wait long. A roar echoed through the wilderness deck, a sound that made Jake's blood freeze. It was rage and hunger combined into pure noise. Then it appeared. The Void Reaver was a nightmare made flesh. 12 feet of corded muscle, with 6 legs ending in razor claws. Its head was mostly mouth, filled with teeth that looked designed to tear through metal. Its skin was dark and seemed to absorb light. Worst of all, it moved with terrible speed, despite its size. It spotted them immediately and charged. Shratha raised her plasma rifle and fired. The shot hit the creature's shoulder, burning through thick hide. It barely slowed down. She fired again, actually laughing as the monster charged. Jake's every instinct screamed to run. But he forced himself to think. Running was death. Fighting it head-on was suicide. He needed another option. As Shratha engaged the creature directly, her 4 arms working in perfect coordination with her weapons, Jake studied the terrain. He noticed the rock formations, the way certain areas were more unstable than others. He saw the energy conduits running along the walls, part of the deck's environmental systems. An idea formed. A crazy, desperate idea. "War Queen," Jake shouted. "Lead it toward the eastern rocks, the tall formations." Shratha glanced at him, surprised he wasn't paralyzed with fear. Then she grinned, a terrifying expression, and began moving, firing to keep the Reaver's attention. Jake ran ahead, his human agility allowing him to navigate the terrain quickly. He reached the rock formations and pulled out his rope and equipment. His hands worked fast, setting up a trap that probably wouldn't work, but was his only chance. The Reaver crashed through the wilderness, following Shratha. She moved with warrior grace, but Jake noticed she was leading the creature exactly where he needed it. She trusted his plan, whatever it was. "Now!" Jake yelled. Shratha dove aside. The Reaver, unable to stop its momentum, charged directly into the area Jake had prepared. The rope triggered, pulling loose a support beam Jake had weakened. The rocks above shifted. At the same moment, Jake fired his rifle not at the creature, but at the exposed energy conduit on the wall. The conduit exploded. Energy arced across the wet rocks where Jake had poured water from his pack. The Reaver, standing in the water, convulsed as electricity coursed through its body. The rock formation, destabilized by Jake's trap, collapsed on top of it. Silence fell over the wilderness deck. Jake stood panting, hardly believing his plan had worked. Shratha rose from her cover position, staring at the pile of rocks and the dead creature partially visible beneath them. In the observation deck above, the watching aliens erupted in shocked chatter. No one had ever seen a human hunt before. They'd expected the human to die within minutes. Instead, they'd witnessed something entirely different. Shratha walked slowly to where Jake stood. Her expression was unreadable. Jake braced himself, unsure if he'd somehow violated hunting protocol. "You fought without honor," she said finally. Jake's heart sank. Then, her mandibles spread in what was definitely a smile. "You fought to win. You used terrain, tools, and intelligence over brute strength. You fought like a human." She placed one of her 4 hands on his shoulder, a gesture of respect. "No human has ever passed the trial. Most species send their greatest warriors. You sent a thinker. Perhaps that is why you survived." Jake managed a weak smile. "Among my people, War Queen, staying alive when you shouldn't is its own kind of honor." Shratha's eyes gleamed with something Jake couldn't quite identify. "Come." We must speak privately about your species' future. And, Commander Torres? Yes? Call me Shratha. You have earned that right. As they walked toward the exit, Jake realized that somehow, impossibly, he'd just changed humanity's fate. And maybe started something else entirely. The medical bay was quiet, except for the soft hum of alien technology. Jake sat on an examination table, while a Zarkath medic treated his injuries. Nothing serious: scrapes, bruises, and one cut on his arm from a sharp rock. The medic worked with surprising gentleness for someone with claws that could tear through steel. You are fortunate, human, the medic said. Most who face the Void Reaver do not leave with such minor wounds. Most don't cheat, Jake replied with a tired smile. In Zarkath culture, there is no cheating in survival. There is only living and dying. After the medic finished, a guard arrived to escort Jake. But instead of taking him back to his quarters or the diplomatic chambers, the warrior led him through corridors Jake hadn't seen before. These passages were quieter, more private. The walls here displayed art battle scenes rendered in careful detail, showing Zarkath history. They stopped at an ornate door. The guard pressed a panel, and the door opened. The War Queen awaits, the guard said, then left Jake alone. Jake's heart rate increased again, though this time, not from fear of death. He stepped inside, and the door closed behind him, with a soft hiss. The chamber was personal quarters, clearly belonging to Shratha. It was larger than his entire apartment back on Earth, but somehow felt intimate. Weapons lined one wall, a collection from various conquests. Another wall held what looked like memory crystals, glowing softly with recorded moments. The lighting was warmer here, less harsh than the rest of the ship. Shratha stood by a viewing port, looking out at the stars. She'd removed her heavy hunting armor and wore something simpler still: armor, but ceremonial rather than functional. Jake could see scars on her scales, marks from countless battles. Each one probably had a story. You came alone, she said without turning. Most species would have sent guards, fearing treachery. You gave your word I'd be safe, Jake replied. She turned to face him, and Jake was struck again by how different she looked from any human concept of beauty, yet how striking she was. Power and grace combined in an alien form that commanded respect. Sit, she gestured to cushions designed for Zarkath anatomy. Jake managed to find a comfortable position on one. Shratha poured 2 containers of liquid, one blue, one amber. She handed Jake the amber one. This is safe for human biology. I had it researched. You researched human-safe drinks? Jake asked, surprised. I research everything that interests me. She took a drink from her own container. And your species interests me greatly, Commander Torres. Jake, he said. You said I could call you Shratha. Fair is fair. Her mandibles twitched with amusement. Jake, a simple name for a complicated species. They sat in silence for a moment. Jake sipped the drink. It tasted like honey mixed with something citrus-like. Not bad. Today you showed me something important, Shratha said finally. You showed me that strength takes many forms. The Zarkath have always valued physical power, combat ability, the strength to dominate. We have built an empire on these principles. She paused, looking down at her 4 hands. But empires built only on strength eventually crumble. They make enemies faster than allies. They breed fear instead of loyalty. Jake listened carefully. This felt like more than casual conversation. My people are at a crossroads, Shratha continued. The younger war leaders want to continue expanding, conquering, dominating. They see the galaxy as something to be taken by force. But I have lived long enough to see where that path leads. We become so focused on being strong that we forget to be wise. And wisdom matters more than strength, Jake offered quietly. In the long term. Yes. She looked at him directly. Your species almost destroyed itself, correct? I read the histories you submitted with your alliance request. Nuclear weapons, climate disasters, wars over resources. You stood at the edge of extinction. We did, Jake admitted. Multiple times. We had enough weapons to destroy Earth dozens of times over. Any rational observer would have predicted we'd use them. But you didn't. Why? Jake thought about how to explain it. Because enough people chose differently. We realized that being able to destroy everything didn't mean we should. We learned that survival required cooperation, not domination. It wasn't easy. We still struggle with it. But we chose to be better than our worst instincts. Shratha stood and walked to her weapon wall. She touched one blade reverently. I have killed more beings than I can count. Warriors, criminals, creatures, like the Reaver. Each time, I grew stronger, more feared. But fear is a lonely companion, Jake. The way she said his name, carefully forming the unfamiliar sound, made something in his chest tighten. The Zarkath are too strong for our own good, she continued. We need balance. We need allies who can show us different ways of thinking. Your species survived not through strength, but through adaptability. That is what we need to learn. So the alliance, Jake started, is more important than you realize. I don't just want humans as trading partners. I want them as teachers, as friends. She turned back to him. Is such a thing possible? Okay. Friendship between species so different? Jake stood, moving closer. I think so. I mean, you called me here to your private quarters. You're sharing your doubts, your hopes. That's what friends do. Friends, Shratha tested the word. We have allies, partners, subordinates. But friends is a human concept. Maybe it's one worth adopting. She moved closer. And Jake realized how near they were standing. He could see the patterns in her scales, the intelligence in her eyes, the vulnerability she was showing him. Earlier, on the negotiation day, you called me something, she said softly. Your translator rendered it as gorgeous. I researched this term. It means beautiful, striking, worthy of admiration. That's right, Jake said, his mouth suddenly dry. Zarkath are called fearsome, mighty, terrible. We are respected and feared, but never beautiful. Never admired in that way. She tilted her head. Did you mean it? Or was it a mistake of your translator? Jake swallowed hard. I meant it. You command a room just by entering it. You're intelligent, powerful, and yes, striking. Beautiful might be a human word, but the concept applies. Shratha's 4 eyes studied him carefully. You are either very brave or very foolish, Jake Torres. Someone once told me those might be the same thing, he replied with a slight smile. She reached out with one hand, carefully, as if touching something fragile. Her clawed finger traced the air near his face without quite touching. Humans are so small, so soft. I could hurt you, without meaning to. But you won't, Jake said with certainty. No, she agreed. I won't. The moment stretched between them, charged with something neither had expected when this mission began. Different species, different worlds, different everything, yet finding unexpected connection. Then, alarms shattered the moment. Red lights flooded the chamber. A voice boomed over the ship's communication system in harsh Zarkath. Shratha's entire body tensed, her warrior instincts taking over. What's happening? Jake asked. Shratha's expression hardened. Treachery. One of my own warships has opened fire on your diplomatic vessel. She grabbed her weapons with practiced speed. The war leaders have made their move. They're trying to force my hand, make me choose between my people and this alliance. Jake's blood ran cold. My crew is under attack. Come, She threw open the door. If you want to save them, we fight together. Now. As they ran through the corridors, Jake realized everything had just changed. The careful diplomacy, the slow building of trust, all of it was about to be tested by fire. And somehow, running toward danger beside an alien warrior queen, Jake felt more alive than he had in years. The corridors of the massive flagship had transformed into a war zone. Explosions echoed through the metal halls. Warriors loyal to Shratha clashed with rebels who supported the war leader's coup. Plasma fire scorched the walls, leaving glowing marks on everything. Jake ran beside Shratha, his human legs struggling to keep pace with her longer stride. She moved with deadly purpose, her 4 arms wielding weapons with terrifying efficiency. Any rebel who appeared in their path quickly regretted it. The docking bay is 3 levels down, Shratha shouted over the chaos. Your crew is trapped there. The rebels have sealed the doors and are preparing to breach your ship. How many rebels? Jake asked, checking his rifle's ammunition. Too many. Shratha replied grimly. The war leaders have been planning this for months. At least 40% of my warriors have joined them. They reached a transport tube, but it was damaged. Sparks flew from broken panels. Shratha growled in frustration and looked around for another route. Wait, Jake said, studying the tube. The emergency ladder. It's manual. No electronics to be sabotaged. The ladder is for maintenance workers, not warriors, Shratha protested. Good thing I'm not a warrior then. Jake pried open the access panel and started climbing down. After a moment's hesitation, Shratha followed. The descent was brutal. Jake's arms burned with effort. Above him, Shratha climbed with her 4 arms, making it look easy. Twice. They had to stop as explosions rocked the ship. Once, a rebel spotted them through a viewing port and fired. Shratha's return shot was faster and more accurate. They emerged on the docking level to find complete chaos. Rebel warriors had set up barricades. The human shuttle was sealed tight, but scorch marks on its hull showed it had been taking fire. Jake's heart pounded. His crew was in there, probably terrified. They're trying to draw me out. Shratha analyzed the tactical situation. If I approach directly, they'll kill your crew as leverage. Then we don't approach directly, Jake said, his mind racing. The maintenance tunnels. They run behind the docking bays, right? I saw them on the ship schematics. Shratha's eyes widened slightly. You studied our ship layout? I study everything that interests me, Jake said, echoing her earlier words. For the first time since the attack began, Shratha's mandibles twitched with something like humor. Come, show me this human cleverness. They moved through shadows and side passages. Jake led, using his smaller size to scout ahead. Twice he saved them from running into rebel patrols by hearing them first. His human hearing, optimized for conversation rather than combat roars, picked up whispered conversations the Zarkath might have missed. The maintenance tunnel was cramped even for Jake. Shratha had to fold her 4 arms close to fit through. They crawled through darkness, guided only by emergency lighting. This is undignified, Shratha muttered. Winning isn't always dignified, Jake replied. They emerged behind the rebel position. Through a grating, Jake could see 15 rebel warriors, all focused on the human shuttle. Their leader, a scarred veteran, was shouting into a communicator. War Queen Shratha, we know you're here. Surrender yourself, or we execute the humans. Jake looked at Shratha. I have an idea, but you're going to hate it. Tell me. You burst through that door, make a lot of noise, draw their attention. I circle around through the cargo area and hit them from behind. Pincer. Movement. That leaves you alone against Zarkath warriors, Shratha said flatly. I don't have to beat them. I just have to distract them long enough for you to even the odds. Jake checked his rifle. Besides, I'm getting good at fighting things that should kill me. Shratha studied him for a long moment. If you die, Jake Torres, I will be very displeased. I'll do my best to avoid that. She reached out and touched his shoulder gently, with one hand a gesture of trust. Jake moved through the cargo area, his heart hammering. He could hear his crew inside the shuttle, voices muffled but alive. That gave him strength. When the 3 minutes ended, Shratha exploded through the maintenance door like a force of nature. She roared a Zarkath battle cry that shook the walls. Plasma fire erupted as rebels turned to face their war queen. Jake moved. He emerged from behind cargo containers and opened fire on the rebels' flank. His shots weren't as powerful as plasma weapons, but they were accurate. 2 rebels went down, more surprised than hurt. But it was enough. The rebels were caught between 2 threats. Shratha pressed forward, her forearms working in perfect coordination. Jake kept moving, using cover, never staying in one place. He fought like a human, unpredictable, adaptable, using the environment. The tide turned quickly. Rebels who had seemed confident moments ago began to falter. Shratha was magnificent and terrifying, a warrior queen defending her honor. Jake was everywhere and nowhere, a ghost that struck and vanished. The rebel leader realized the battle was lost. He raised his weapon toward the human shuttle. If he couldn't win, he'd take hostages. Jake saw it happening. Without thinking, he broke cover and ran. It was suicide. He'd never reach the rebel in time. But he ran anyway, shouting to draw attention. Shratha saw Jake's desperate charge. She threw one of her blades with perfect accuracy. It struck the rebel leader's weapon, knocking it aside. His shot went wide, missing the shuttle. Then, Shratha was there, disarming him in a blur of motion. "You forget your oaths," she said coldly. "You forget what it means to be Zarkath." The remaining rebels dropped their weapons, defeated. The shuttle door opened cautiously. Sarah emerged first, weapon ready, followed by the rest of the crew. They looked shaken, but unharmed. "Boss," Sarah called out. "What did you do? Started a civil war?" "Just made some friends," Jake replied, exhausted. Over the next hours, Shratha restored order to her ship. The rebels were imprisoned. Messages were sent to the fleet. The war leaders who had orchestrated the coup found their support crumbling. Many Zarkath warriors had been uncertain, but seeing their war queen fight alongside humans, seeing the effectiveness of cooperation over brute force, changed minds. Days later, in the same negotiation chamber where it all began, a new treaty was signed. Other species watched with amazement. The Zarkath Empire and humanity had become official allies, partners, not subjects. As Jake prepared to return to his ship, Shratha walked with him to the docking bay. Her warriors gave them respectful distance. "Your people will need an ambassador stationed here," Shratha said. "Someone who understands Zarkath culture. Someone I trust. Are you offering me a job?" Jake asked. "I am offering a future. For both our species." She paused. "And perhaps, for us. For us. For us." Jake smiled. "That tone again. Still think I should be careful with it?" Shratha's mandibles spread in that alien smile he'd grown to appreciate. "No. I think that tone is exactly right." They stood together, human and Zarkath, looking out at the stars that now held possibilities neither had imagined weeks ago. Behind them, crews from both species worked together, already finding common ground. The Crix delegate told the Lumens that maybe these humans were more interesting than anyone had predicted. The Granite Collective updated their databases. Humans were no longer classified as minor species. And on a flagship that had known only war, 2 beings from different worlds had found something unexpected. Connection, respect, and the beginning of something neither had words for yet. The galaxy was changing. One bold statement, one dangerous hunt, one desperate battle at a time. And it all started with a human who dared to speak his mind to a warrior queen. The end.